Now, Positively Ernie with Ernie Anastas, a New York TV legend and radio host with great positive stories and interviews.
Thanks, Ernie. You're the best.
And now, here's Ernie.
Hi, everybody, and welcome back to the show. Nice to have you here. I really enjoy this program a lot. You know, this is where I look at things that are happening in the news and what people are talking about, but I have a positive viewpoint on what's going on. And today I have a special guest, someone who I think you're really going to enjoy. This is an interesting guy that I've known for a long time, and he's got a terrific reputation. His name is Mike Lyons, and I want you to say hi to him right now. Hi, Mike.
Hey, Ernie. Great to be with you. Thanks so much for having me.
Good to have you here, Mike. You know, people should know a little bit about you. Mike is an interesting guy. He is a retired Army major and a West Point graduate. He has had combat experience and a lot of other assignments in the military. But Mike is also a very interesting guy. You probably have seen or heard him on several of the networks around the country and around the world, in fact. He does a lot of analysis, military and leadership consulting, and he does a lot of other things that we're going to talk about right now. And Mike, you've got a great career, and as long as I've known you, you've always been, what I really appreciate, enthusiastic about what you do. And what has created that? I think it's from early on in life, isn't it?
No, it is. I've tried to always have a positive attitude. I think you can't accomplish anything without a positive attitude. I was blessed with great coaches when I was a kid, and my high school football coach is one of the most significant people in my life, and he, without a positive attitude, you can't get anything accomplished. It's a fundamental tenet of leadership.
Yes.
If the leader is not positive about something, nothing is going to happen, right?
Exactly.
So, in that regard. So no, I have always been enthusiastic. It's the only way to go. You can look at the glass half empty at times, but you've got to move forward, and half full is the way to go.
You do, and you really are always moving forward. Now, you mentioned the word leadership, and I know we want to talk about that today because that's a very important area. And you're a proponent of leadership in the military, of course, but also as you see it in the civilian world. And I've also had a great interest in leadership. I think it makes a huge difference in terms of where an organization, where a company, where a family, where everything goes if you have some sense of direction. So when you talk about leadership, and I know you do a lot of different speeches and seminars and so forth, what is the headline? What do you like to talk about when you're kind of describing what a good leader is?
Well, Ernie, so many different things I can think of. I think first and foremost, to be a leader in today's world, to be successful, you have to be a servant leader, and you have to recognize that your subordinates and people around you are more important. They're the ones that are going to get things done that you want to get done. I've personally been a lifelong learner of leadership. I went to the Military Academy, West Point, which is the leadership laboratory. Cadets get up every day and learn different lessons about leadership. And I'll tell you, there's good and bad leaders. We've learned sometimes from bad leaders, and we see how not to respond. But I think first and foremost is that servant leader, and that person that puts others first. And recognizes that that is the way to move things forward. Now, let's pivot that a little bit, because you also have to be a situational leader. There's times when you have to apply different leadership styles. I think the military gets a little bit of a bad rap in that people think that in the military, as an officer or a non-commissioned officer, you order people around. I'm the leader because of what I rank and my position power.
Yeah, a lot of people have that idea, yes.
Yeah, and I would say that doesn't work in the civilian world. It really doesn't work in the military. I mean, you can't get people to do things they don't really want to do. Right. So you have to motivate them, inspire them. Yep. Be positive, to your point about it. So to me, that servant leader is most important, but then that situational leader applying the right style.
When you talk about leadership, I'm right with you, and I understand it. As I told you, I took some courses at Harvard Business School, which I really enjoyed, all about leadership. And fundamentally, that's exactly what we're talking about. You have to be able to listen.
Yeah.
You have to be able to listen to what's going on, to be able to communicate ideas, and to motivate and inspire people. You know that line, if your door is closed, you have problems. If your door is open, you have solutions.
Yep.
And that's what you have to do. Now, when you talk about leaders in the military, let's just talk about that. Who are the top 3 or 4 military leaders that you'd say these people were like exceptional?
Oh boy, from my time studying
Yeah.
history, so many to pick from. I'd start first with U.S. Grant, Ulysses S. Grant as a leader, leading the Union Army to succeed in this on our Civil War. I don't think he gets the credit. I think he's had a renaissance now with what's been happening. I think people are recognizing how important he was.
You never recognized during your time.
That's
anyway.
right, and he was a president, West Point graduate as well. So I think U.S. Grant. If you go back and study what he did, and then you look at General Eisenhower, who wins the Second World War and saves the world from Nazism and fascism. And
what a figure he was.
Exactly. And again, a tremendous situational leader, a collaborative leader, brought the right people together, didn't always put American interests first where we thought that he could have because other countries had things vested in what they were doing. And he was the perfect kind of person for that job. And then I think that last leader, if I give you three examples, the general officer that ran Desert Storm, the battle I was in, General Norman Schwarzkopf was so inspirational, right? And just someone that you always knew his intent. I think that's so important from a leader's perspective, is to know the intent. What intent means, absence, guidance when I'm not there. If there's nothing going on, how are you going to act? And with General Schwarzkopf, we all knew what we were going to do. We were going to attack and we were going to move forward.
He set the tone.
Hey, absolutely.
Exactly.
And so that, to me, from a military perspective, those were three. That two of them go on to become presidents. They kind of cross over.
Yeah.
Norman Schwarzkopf, though, from my as a leader, I was grateful that he was the commanding general when I was in combat, because I always knew he had our interests at heart.
Yeah, I remember covering the parade here in New York City with Schwarzkopf, and I also remember Colin Powell as well.
Yep.
A lot of good names. So in the military, you have some of these real strong figures, and there are so many others.
Sure.
And you could go on and on. Take it into the civilian world.
Yeah.
Okay, leaders of today. If I were to ask you, three of the top leaders that you see in today's world, in terms of the direction, the guidance, and to me, a leader is someone who has the vision.
Yeah. That's
the difference.
Yeah.
If you have the vision of where you want to go, where you want to take whatever it is, that makes a great leader. Who are they?
It's funny. So much noise, I think, goes around the civilian leaders of the world right now. And you've got to start with Elon Musk, number one, obviously, because of the businesses he runs, the visions he's had, the impact he's had on social media, taking over Twitter, converting it to X, and what he's done with electronic vehicles, and leaders in pharmaceuticals. So it's much more niche based in these other civilian societies and civilian companies. I think that what a leader would bring from a civilian perspective is a broad base of experience. Yeah. And that's why, again, when Elon Musk runs a social media company and then can run an engineering company, he's deep down as an engineer, that shows tremendous leadership. And you look at even Jamie Dimon, you look at people here on Wall Street, with all of the forces that are acting on our country, keeping a steady hand on the financial backbone. What makes America great is the financial acumen that we have here in this country. And I think leaders like that are important to that.
But you know what? And I know, Mike, you'll agree with me that when you listen to people, in general, they will talk about a lack of leadership today.
Yeah.
That there may be a handful of people that you can point out, but then again, people are saying we don't have people who really are committed.
Yeah.
It seems to be a lot of self-serving, but that's been a problem for years. But perhaps now more than ever with the internet, social media, there's a lot of self-promotion.
Sure.
And people see that, and they look for those who have a genuine desire to do good.
Yeah.
How do you answer people who say, we don't really have that leadership? What's wrong? What's missing, and how can we get it back?
Well, if you get to a place where you get a leader and they exhibit those qualities, get out of there. It's not a good environment for you to be in, and those toxic environments are not something that are going to be positive for you to be. Right. I always look at people's competence and commitment to what kind of what they're doing, and as a leader, recognize every subordinate is asking a couple of questions. Is this person committed to excellence? Leaders are committed to excellence. Is this person going to look out for me and is going to make sure that I'm going to move along, and are we going to all move along together? I think that the best leaders that I've seen kind of know what they know what they don't know.
Yeah.
Right. They are adept at emotional intelligence. They read the room. They recognize when to say something, when to not say something. Your point about communication. But my recommendation is if you're in an environment where the leader is toxic, or in a situation where they're not looking out for the welfare of everybody, time to find another place.
You know, it's interesting because I was going to bring this up. I think what goes hand in hand with leadership is a word called loyalty.
Yeah.
And I think when you talk to a lot of people, they'll say, you know what, if I feel that the boss is loyal to me, because I'm being loyal to them, because it's a two-way street.
Yeah.
And a lot of people today feel that, you know, that loyalty isn't there.
Sure.
That you can be replaced.
Yeah.
Whether it's by another individual or AI or whatever it happens to be.
Right.
And so, and I want you to talk about that. That loyalty issue is very important, to feel that you belong and someone truly cares about you.
Yeah.
And you're not just a number.
Yeah, I think you project loyalty as a leader by showing people around you that you're going to endure the hardship. You know, I used to work at a place where I had people installing equipment late at night, and I had to show up at late at night to show them I wasn't good at installing the equipment, but they worked for me, and they were part of our big organization, and I wanted them to know that I was willing to endure the hardship with them because they were away from their families and the like. But loyalty is important, and it's something that's demonstrated. It's not, you can't talk about it. You can talk about it all you want, and oftentimes it has to be tied to what's the overall objective. What are we trying to do here? And then a good leader recognizes that, you know, Colin Powell has a tremendous list of things that regard to his laws of leadership, so to speak. You know, a couple of them in particular, for example, for those out there that are struggling with their position, you know, don't put your position so close to your ego. When the position falls, your ego falls with it. You've got to remain confident there. But in every case, a leader should be always trying to push the subordinates to do better and almost work out of that job, because we're going to find something else for you to do that you're going to move forward with.
Americans love using their credit cards, the most secure and hassle-free way to pay. But D.C. politicians want to change that with the Durbin-Marshall credit card bill. This bill lets corporate megastores pick how your credit card is processed, allowing them to use untested payment networks that jeopardize your data security and rewards. Corporate megastores will make more money, and you pay the price. Tell Congress to guard your card, because Americans lose when politicians choose. Learn more at guardyourcard.com.
You know, we both have an interest in young people.
Sure.
We're family men, and I know you do a lot of work. I mean, you're even doing things with the NHL.
Yep, I coach.
You know, and you're around that kind of an environment. To me, I think it's very important to be able to instill the right feelings about leadership and loyalty and all the things we talked about at a very early age. I think everything at an early age is important.
Yeah.
But I want to talk about that for a minute. Like, how do we help our young people?
Yeah.
Whether it's at home, which is the center, in our schools, in our community, in our neighborhood. How do we help our young people to understand the really fundamental basic values of good leadership and being a good friend and being a good supporter, to be able to see, you know, our society build and grow and develop into something that we're all proud of?
Yeah, great question, Ernie. I think that, first of all, to be a good leader, to be a dynamic leader, you have to be a dynamic subordinate. And I think that I would advise youth of today to listen to your coaches, listen to your teachers, become self-disciplined, right? If you can't expect to project other values on other things if you're not showing them. Leadership is all about leading by example in some ways and doing those kinds of things. So study hard in school, get those good grades, seek out mentors, look for people that are taking an interest in you, that in a way that you know that are going to be positive, that have been successful. Recognize you're going to have bad days. I think in some ways we've put so much pressure on our kids today, kids I coach, for example, about to be perfect on certain things, and you're going to have bad days, and you've got to recover from them.
How you handle it.
Exactly. You're going to fail a test. You're going to do things. Prepare for all those things. So it's all about, I think, being a dynamic subordinate, and from that cases, you have that responsibility to be a good student, to be a good athlete, and then go from there. You know,
you touched on athletics, which is a big area, big field, especially for young people. And I really admire when I'm watching, particularly tennis matches.
Sure.
And I end up seeing, the players congratulating each other at the end of a match. Now, people will say whether it's sincere or not. It doesn't matter.
Yeah.
The point is that they're demonstrating that, which is a fine example. But to me, when I hear, as I mentioned, whatever it happens to be at a major tennis match, when I hear the loser, if you will, talk about and congratulate the winner and talk about their qualities, I admire that so much. And I say, what a great example of how to, and that particular person who's saying that is elevated.
Sure.
Everybody talks about that person and say, wow, this guy is great. This woman is terrific.
Yeah.
I think that's a very important fact, that when you have an opportunity to be a good sport, you have to demonstrate that.
Yeah.
And I think that can make a huge difference, especially with the little ones.
Yeah, as a coach, I always impart that onto the players I've always had about being a good sport, about if we're going to play hard, we're going to leave everything on the ice when we're out there. But when it's over, if we've lost, we learn. We don't necessarily just lose. We don't take a step back. And in some ways, when you do have those losses, they end up making other successes over down the line. So that's the responsibility of a coach, to teach those kinds of manners. And then as they mature, the athlete matures, they recognize the importance of that sportsmanship.
Mike, as a military guy, okay, West Point, retired major, combat experience and all of that and so forth, and you do a lot with the academy right now.
Yeah.
I wanted to ask you about something that I did a story about it not too long ago, that military recruitment enrollment is down.
Yeah.
Seriously down.
It is.
I think, and I may be mistaken here, but the only armed force that seemed to be doing well were the Marines. Mm-hmm. And they basically said because they have a good campaign.
Yeah.
And I want to ask you about that. Are we having a serious problem right now with our military in terms of recruiting more people and building up our force?
There's a challenge going on in the military right now for that. Some of it has to do with just being qualified. The bar is high to get into the military. I came from the earlier generation. Go back to the 60s and 70s, where the military was, they still had the draft, and it was the volunteer army, and judges gave people the choice of going to jail or going to the military. Like, those days are long over. And we've had a superb military for the past 30, 40 years, since the ashes of Vietnam. And I think, and I thank God, and I thank a Vietnam veteran anytime I see them, because on their backs is because we have the military we have today. They were scorned when they came home. They did not receive the rightful congratulations, and they did not receive the thanks that they should have from this country. But that's another separate issue. Yeah. But the point is, the forces that are acting on youth today of being out of shape and sitting on their couch and playing video games and all those kinds of things are impacting that qualified pool. So that's part of it. It is a campaign. There's no question it's a message of what you can contribute. But to think about, we still have tremendous candidates that come into our military every day, that serve their country, that are patriotic, that recognize it's still a great place to start.
People always worry about war.
Sure.
I mean, it's the ugliest thing you could ever imagine. It's so inhumane. Disturbing is not the word. I mean, it's just beyond that. And people are concerned about it. And looking towards the future with technology and the way things are. Maybe we'll bring in communications too. I'm not really sure.
Right.
What do you see looking into the future in terms of where we're going? Are we going into, I would hope, a better place?
Yeah.
Or are we going into something that's going to be unheard of right now?
I went to war as a young man, and I always vowed going forward I would do everything I could to educate people on the horrors of war, about it's the unnecessary aspect of it. But here we sit in a world with conflict in Europe and conflict in Gaza and in Israel, and I just always hoped the United States. So when I went to war, I was grateful because protection of our force was a priority. As I looked at our great equipment, and I knew that we felt safe, we felt invincible, and it's kind of crazy to say that. But then you look at what's going on in Russia, where you see the Russian the country puts its soldiers in these death traps and these tanks that blow up, and they just don't care about their lives. As for going to war, though, it's deterrence. It's the United States. We should make it so bloody, absolute impossible for a country to think that if they attack us or do something to us, that they will survive anything about it. So deterrence to me is the key. Right now, I'm very concerned about the Pacific, whether or not we have enough deterrence to keep China in its kind of box, so to speak, as they are trying to project power. We have a pan-NATO situation going on there, with great allies: Australia, Japan, South Korea, the Philippines. But and my son's in the Navy now, so I'm concerned about our U.S. Navy.
Yeah.
Our Navy needs to project power. Our Air Force needs to project power, and then our Army and Marine Corps need to be ready to go when the time comes.
You know, there are probably people, listening and watching to what I'm going to say, and they'll say that you're being a little unrealistic here, Ernie. But, I do hear the conversations, and I have these persuasions as well, that in a time when communications has never been better.
Right.
I mean, what we have available at our hands
Sure.
is incredible.
Yeah.
To be able to talk, communicate all over the world.
Yeah.
Why can't that force be used in a positive way?
Right.
To be able to have world leaders sit and say, wait a minute, let's unite.
Yeah.
In a broad sense.
Sure.
Let's unite in a common cause of saving humanity.
Yeah.
We're all in this. Everybody's in it. And no one's coming out alive,
Right.
one way or another.
Right.
So why can't we stop and say, if that's the truth, if that's what it is, why can't our world leaders find a way to say, look, we have our interests.
Yeah.
Okay? That's not going to change.
Right.
But let's have a common interest to say, let's respect one another. Let's understand one another. Let's find a way to avoid the war.
Yeah.
Let's find a way to live in a better world. Again, people might say, you're being unrealistic.
Yeah.
But I'd like to see that someday, which would be nice.
Yeah, I still believe in peace through superior deterrence and equipment in that regard, because when you look at the conduct of some of the world leaders, they're untrustable.
It goes back to leadership, doesn't it?
Right, it goes back to that.
What you and I were talking about.
Exactly. There's always... I look at linchpins. I look at things that make differences in the like. And so far we haven't seen that happen in Ukraine and Russia, for example. What I mean by a linchpin is like what will force one side to now really change their behavior.
Yeah.
Haven't really seen it. Haven't seen it in Israel as well. There's not any kind of change there. For us, it's our technology. It's our GPS. It's our communication systems. When I was in Desert Storm, I didn't get a chance to call home for 2 months. Now soldiers can be deployed to the far ends of the earth and pick up a phone and call anybody anytime.
Yeah.
So your point about communications and things that we have here in our country are just tremendous, difference makers. And you've got to find, again, the linchpins. But we deal with people in the world that want to do us harm, unfortunately.
Oh, no, unfortunately. I love this discussion. I always ask my guests kind of one of my closing questions. If you could offer a newborn baby a piece of advice from your experience in life, what you've done, what you know, what you feel, what kind of little nugget would you pass along to a newborn baby to say, you know what, I want you to tuck this away.
Yeah.
And someday I hope that this will be helpful in your life. What would that be, Mike?
Well, I hope it's not transactional. I hope it's not a one thing about, buying Microsoft stock in the next 10 years or something. I would just say blaze a path that you feel is right and know and hope that you're surrounded by support systems. I mean, good parents and good family and a good school district. And not everybody has this. And seek out ways to make yourself better all the time.
Yeah.
I would say to a newborn, I'd say, just like you said you did, Ernie, like spend a lifetime continuously learning.
Yeah.
No matter whether you're when you start school, when you get out of school, when you start your job, and your later careers,
keep growing,
and you're going to keep moving forward. And if your body is this vehicle to get you through this thing called life, right?
Yeah.
And if you get to that spot where it's almost over and it's all nicked up and it's all scarred up, then you know what? You probably did a lot of good stuff. You had a lot of impact.
It's a very good piece of advice.
Trust your instinct.
And you know what? In closing, I love quotations, and one that I use often, and it's to your point when you talk about going for it. Don't go where the path may lead.
Right.
Go where there's no path, and leave a trail.
Right.
create something different.
Blaze it. Absolutely.
Yeah, blaze it. Mike Lyons, terrific guest. Congratulations. If people want to get in touch with you, any activities that they want to contact you on, I mean, you're available to do so many different things. How do they reach you? MAJ,
Mike Lyons. I'm on X. I'm on Twitter there. I'm also on Facebook. Under the Military Minute, you can find me there. I'm in LinkedIn and places like that. Always want to talk about leadership, talk about good things, how positive our military in particular, and keeping our country strong.
Fantastic. Mike Lyons, great guest. Take care of your family. Stay well and happy. Come back and see us again sometime, okay?
I will. Thank you.
All right. Thank you, Mike. Thanks, everybody, for watching, and we'll catch you next time here on Positively Ernie. Bye.